Hi creative friends, I'm Jane from Sustain My Craft Habit. Today I want to show you how to make this beautiful farmhouse inspired serving tray with just a piece of pine, our Cricut maker, and a little bit of resin to go on top. Welcome back to our channel. If you're new here, we'd love for you to look around, and if you like what you see, please be sure to subscribe. We share nature-inspired DIY crafts and home decor ideas each week. This particular project brings together two of our favorite crafting techniques, and that is working with our Cricut machine to cut out beautiful vinyl designs, as well as resin. So this particular project is a little bit more involved. It requires multiple steps, but at the end of it, you have these gorgeous trays, serving trays, that are really perfect for serving breakfast in bed in the morning, or to display a beautiful vignette for any season. I have mine. You can even just have it sitting up in your decor. So this particular project has a grateful design on there, which is from Cricut's Design Space. In this tutorial, we'll show you everything from staining the piece of pine board, so this is the back side of the board, to applying the decal, cutting it out and applying it, and then to pouring the resin and attaching the handles. Now, if you are not keen on the shiny glossy finish, it's a beautiful glass-like finish. You can probably see the reflection there. You could also leave it a little bit more rustic and not do the resin coating. But we really like this resin coating because, especially on a piece of pine wood, the wood is quite soft, and so if it gets wet, it may not look as nice after a while of using, and so the resin really gives it a nice polished finish. As I mentioned, this particular project takes a few steps and requires more supplies than the tutorials that we usually share here on the blog. But this particular project is one of those that makes a really impressive gift idea for anybody. It's also a great project if you'd like to start making and selling different crafts in your local communities or even in an Etsy shop. The sky's the limit. You could personalize the sayings on the tray, and really it comes together, other than that, pretty simply with these handles that we got off of Amazon, the pine board from our local hardware store, and then our Cricut machine and the vinyl that we have here from our craft store. To begin, we sanded down the pine board really nice and smooth, and then applied this Decoart color stain to the surface. All you need for that is a little rag. Wipe the stain onto the wood surface, and then wipe off any excess and let it dry. While the color stain is drying, you can go ahead and cut out the vinyl phrase. We downloaded this design from Cricut's Design Space. It's a really pretty decal that says grateful. And then once we cut it out onto the black permanent adhesive vinyl, simply teased out the design. You can obviously use any phrase you'd like, or it could look really nice with a monogram or even a last name for a family. Really, the sky is the limit for this. Take your time and remove all the little pieces from the wreath part of the decal. Once all of your little pieces are removed from the vinyl backing, cut out a piece of transfer tape to size and use that to transfer the design onto the wood surface. Now, what do you do if you don't have a Cricut machine to cut out your decal? Well, there's lots of them available. You can buy on Amazon, or even Etsy is our preferred source. If you're really good with hand lettering, you could paint this design or a similar design onto your wood surface, or find a sticker, as long as it's not paper sticker. If it's a vinyl sticker, that's perfect, and apply that to the surface of your serving board. Okay, now we are going to make sure that the phrase is centered and apply that onto the board. Use a ruler to help if you're not great at measuring things by eye like me, and then simply apply that very carefully to your piece of pine board. It gets a little bit finicky, especially when you have fragile little pieces, and sometimes the surface you're applying to doesn't want to cooperate, but again, take your time and you can get that design onto the serving board. We're almost done here. If you need to, you can cut down the transfer tape backing to make this part a little more doable and have smaller pieces to work with. Leave us a comment below for what you would put on the serving tray. Would you write grateful or would you do something different? Now, once the decal is applied to the surface of the board, we're going to give it a seal. I'm going to coat it up. So here I'm using this Decoart decoupage sealer. It's a matte finish, but it really doesn't matter. You can use Mod Podge or any other water-based sealer that you already have and give it just a good coating on there. Okay, this is really important if you're going to do the resin part of the project, which I guess is optional if you would prefer not to. You could go ahead and simply apply the handles and you're good to go. But if you are going to do resin, the sealing is important to make sure that the bubbles don't ruin your project at the end. Okay, so we've talked about how to prep the piece. I've raised it up on my surface. Make sure you have something underneath that you don't worry about damaging later, that you can feel good about throwing out. I'm going to put on my gloves. Please always wear gloves when you're working with resin. Also, ideally you would be wearing a respirator. I have my windows open down here. I like to wear a respirator when I'm working on a project, but it's a little difficult to talk to you at the same time. So I've been also warming my bottles here in a warm water bath. As I mentioned, it really helps with reducing the bubbles. I always love to have some paper towels on hand because you want to make sure you wipe off any water, that it doesn't mix in with your resin, because it could spoil your resin. So you don't want that. So there are my bottles all ready to go. I have two measuring cups here. And what I did yesterday when I poured this piece, so I did this yesterday, it's still a little tacky, it needs a bit longer to set, but it's beautiful. I did a total of 3 ounces. So 1.5 ounces of each, and I found I was trying to stretch it. So in a couple of the spots, I didn't get as good coverage as I was hoping for. So today, and that's a bit of trial and error, and a tip with using the Envirotex light is, you know, we don't want to have a lot of waste with it, but at the same time, you need enough to complete your project. So today I'm going to measure 2 ounces of both. The resin is the clearer bottle. It says resin on it. And we're gonna do 2 ounces. So now I'm adding, this is the hardener, the second component. So we are going to just add an equal amount. I'm adding 2 ounces of this to my cup. And the fact that the bottles are warm, I can already tell there's less bubbles that are being introduced into the resin. Now you think I would have found my measuring spoon. So now I'm just using a wooden wooden stir stick. And we're going to stir now the resin, the 2 parts that are combined, for 2 full minutes. And this part is important because this is really what activates the 2 components to start working together. And it's also really important to accurately measure the components. So now I've been stirring this for about 2 minutes. I'm going to put this up here, although it's not ideal, but just bear with me. So now I'm going to pour this mixture that I've been mixing for about 2 minutes or so. And now we're going to use a second wooden stir stick. And I will continue stirring this for about another minute. And this is, I can tell already, it's going to be really good. It's nice and clear at this point. It's not milky. There's a few bubbles inside, but that's okay. Those will get evaporated with the technique later. So there we go, we've got our resin, and now all we're going to do is really pour and coat the surface of the project. But we're going to just pour the resin on, and then you can use your stick to kind of spread it around. I actually have some brushes which really helps with this too. So I'm just going to use this brush and spread the resin out. As I mentioned, the Envirotex light does self-level in time, so it doesn't have to be perfect. Like, you don't have to worry about getting the right amount of resin everywhere. You just want to make sure that your entire surface is coated, that there's not really any sections that are missing. So we're going to spread this out a little bit. What I'm doing now is I'm just using my brush. I've kind of spread the resin all over the surface. I'm really happy with how it's coming together. It was just enough resin to give a nice coating. Some of it is dripping off the sides, but that's okay because I'm going to use my brush actually, and I actually want that. I'm going to pull a little bit more resin from in the cup and brush the sides so that the sides get a nice coated finish as well. I don't want to pull too much off the top now because then I may get kind of the divots from, it should still be okay because it'll still kind of settle, but if you're farther along in your project, it may not fill into those holes. But I have enough resin in here to use my paintbrush and kind of spread the amounts that have dripped down to coat the edges, the side edges. I can't quite see what's happening on the back side there, so I may have to later, I think I may later then, once this side is cured, probably go and do the other side as well. And then once I do that side, I can finish up this edge, which is hard to see from this angle. Okay, so I'm really liking how it's looking. I hope you guys are enjoying this, have seen it. The last step now is, I'm going to lift it up, which I'm not sure that that's such a great idea. So you can see how lovely it's looking. So the last step is we're going to use, I like this little kitchen torch that I got at my local hardware store. And you simply are going to go over the resin, and as I'm doing this I can see the little micro bubbles are popping. This part is really important actually. I'm kind of trying to step back because it's not ideal to breathe in this at this point. I should have my mask on, but I do have my windows wide open, and then that gives you the best outcome. So if you're having trouble with your resin kind of not curing properly, maybe reassess the temperature of your environment where you're working, and also make sure there's not too much humidity because that can really impact how your resin is curing. So we don't want to get too close with the flame. If you can see, I'm not like right on the piece. You're about 6 inches away, and slowly kind of going over. Okay, so I think I've gotten a lot of the micro bubbles now, and I will repeat that degassing in about 10-15 minutes just to make sure anything that's still rising up will get handled. And then I'm going to actually, and this is such an important tip for when you're working with Envirotex light, is find a big board or surface. I like to use, like, depending on how high your surface is off the ground, but my bottles, I just kind of arrange them around, and the box is kind of an even surface, the 3 pieces, and then put something to cover to make sure dust does not settle on there, okay? Because that is the best way to ruin your beautiful new resin project.
Okay, after letting the resin cure for at least 24 hours, ideally 72 hours, we have a nice hard finish. It's this beautiful, reflective, smooth coating. I just really love how this turned out. The last step is then to attach the handles. So flip over the piece, center the handles so they are 1 inch from the outer edges of the board. Mark them with a pencil and then drill holes from the front to the back and attach the handles with the screws. I've also added on little silicone nubs to the bottom so that the board doesn't sit directly onto the table surface.
And that's it. That's how you make a beautiful serving tray from a piece of pine board and a few other supplies. We're so glad that you watched this tutorial. If you liked it, please be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more crafting ideas. We have a number of different Cricut projects as well as resin crafts projects. One of my favorite one is a resin demolding video. So if you love to watch resin pieces come out of their molds, be sure to check out that project. Leave a comment below letting us know what you would write on your tray. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next week. Bye!